Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. You'll see from the title that we're going to do a book tag today. It has been so long since I've done a book tag. So it's like, let's just do one. Why not? So I'm going to do the D&D book tag. I have played a little bit of D&D in sort of like the last couple of years. I have a couple of friends who play D&D. I've got one who she plays like 3 sessions every week. Like she's really into her D&D. So I'm not unfamiliar with sort of the certain tropes and things that come along with Dungeons and Dragons. And also when you grow up reading pretty much only fantasy, you can't avoid, like, we all know what Dungeons and Dragons is. So, with all of that said, and without too much rambling ahead, hopefully, let's just dive straight into it. Before I get into the prompts, this tag was created by Jem over at The Creepy Geek and Ashley over at Ashley's Bookish Life. My laptop with my notes is over here, which is why I keep looking over here. We'll try not to do too much of that, but hey. But yes, I will have both of them tagged down below. And with that said, let's just jump straight into the prompts now, shall we? So the very first prompt is Everyone's Dead, a character with a tragic backstory. It is really difficult to create a character. I found it's really hard to create a character that doesn't have a tragic backstory when you are coming up with a brand new character for D&D. I've made 3 or 4 characters, played with at least 3 of them, and honestly only one of them didn't have a tragic backstory because I deliberately set out when I made this character, having heard about some of the rest of my group were going to be doing, I was like, nope, he's just gonna be fine. He's just gonna have a stable family life. Everything's gonna be fine. He's not gonna have a tragic backstory because I'm sure there'll be plenty of tragedy in his future. So yeah, I get it. That said, when I was looking at my shelves and trying to think about like books I've read, this was a difficult one. I really struggled. So if you guys have any suggestions, like how you would answer them, or just any of the prompts below that I'm going to be getting into, pop them down in the comments. Let me know. Like, what are your suggestions for books that have characters with a tragic backstory? Because although a lot of what I've read has had a lot of tragedy in it, and our characters go through so much, I don't consider backstory if we are reading about it there and then. For me, backstory is here's something that happened before the book even started, and we might get flashbacks to it, or it might be alluded to, but it's not what the characters are going through right now. And apparently I just really like reading about the tragedy and the horrible lives that they go through there and then. So what I've actually gone with for this one is, I think, possibly one of the original, or one of the first, maybe, probably not, but, you know, this is a character who, like, he has a tragic backstory. Some would refer to him as the villain of the story. Some, possibly including myself, would refer to him more as a victim of his circumstances. He did the best with what he had, okay, guys? He had a really shit bringing. He had a really crap lot in life. And by the time we meet him, he's been jaded and twisted by it. And that is the Phantom from Phantom of the Opera. He was born disfigured. He was used as a circus act, treated like a demon, and ostracized and everything. And by the time we meet the Phantom, he is living in the bowels of the opera theatre, completely hidden from sight because everyone shudders at his grotesque appearance. So, I mean, you don't get much more tragic of a backstory than that. So, Phantom of the Opera. The next prompt, it's roll Persuasion With Advantage, an autobuy author. This was an interesting one because I was thinking about, like, who are all of my autobuy authors? So I'll give you just a couple. We've got Robin Hobb, except she's not really published anything lately. R.F. Kuang is probably like my newest autobuy author. the one I'm probably going to go with right now, because this is the author that not only do I immediately pre-order all of her books, but I read them pretty soon after they come in, I think with one exception. And that's Ali Hazelwood. I've got 6 of her novels, 6 of the 7 published novels sitting on the bookshelf down here, which means they are read. The only one that I have not read is Check and Mate, which is her only YA novel, and I've not got the novellas. But everything else I read. I'll automatically give her 5 stars. She's brilliant. She is my go-to for romance right now. Deep End was released just this month, and I started it the day it came in. It was delivered to my bookshelf, and I immediately started reading it, and I loved it. So for this one, it has to be Ali Hazelwood, because not only is she an auto-buy, she is an auto-immediately start reading. Right, the third prompt, Me and the Boys Gonna Mess You Up, an ensemble cast you love. This again was another really hard one. I really like pretty much all these prompts. This one, I was like, oh yeah, they'll be totally easy, because I read my fair chunk of fantasy. And then I realised that a lot of the fantasy that I love only follow 1 or 2 POV characters. And for me, an ensemble cast is we're seeing multiple POV chapters. Also, I have not been reading a huge amount of epic fantasy lately. I think I can feel myself getting back there. You will probably start seeing especially as months go past. I think 2025 is going to be sort of like the year I get a little bit more back into epic fantasy. But yeah, I've not been reading a huge amount of it, and those that I do follow at most 1 or 2 characters. Last epic fantasy I read, I've not long finished the Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, and although there is plenty of characters in it, we're following Rin. We're following a character. So this one, again, was another bit of a head scratcher. What do I pick? And so I've run completely opposite from epic fantasy. And this is a book, I've mentioned it once or twice on this channel, but I don't talk about it all the time. And that is A Little Something Different by Sandy Hall. This is what is an otherwise fairly ordinary love story about 2 university students. They live in the same building, and they're just sort of like hovering and orbiting around each other. And it's how they slowly come together. And it would be an otherwise really ordinary story, and it wouldn't have a lot going for it. But neither of our main love interests get a POV chapter. This book has, I think it's 14 different POVs. And we flick back and forth between all of the various ones. And this is a love story told from everybody else's point of view. So you get how everybody else on the periphery is feeling. So when you're feeling really frustrated that they're being so incredibly oblivious and seriously, how can you not see what's right in front of you? That's great, because you're seeing how everyone else is feeling that as well. I particularly enjoy chapters from the POV of the squirrel. The park bench was quite a good one. But you also get their English literature teacher, or their creative writing teacher, a couple of their professors. You get various friends, a brother. So yeah, it's literally everybody else except them. So that's that one. Was that roll 4? Roll 4. Was that prompt 4? Oh gosh, no, that was only prompt 3. Okay, let's do this. I don't do short videos, let's face it, we know this. But prompt 4, I rolled a 1. A character that tries their best, but just keeps failing. I just mentioned that I've recently read Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. Rin fits this prompt to a T. Particularly in that one of the things that frustrates me about Rin, for me I find interesting. It's something that really annoyed me and frustrated me about David Copperfield. David Copperfield. Yes, I think that's the Charles Dickens character. I tried to read that book. I DNF'd it because I hate David. No, I don't hate David. That's harsh. But he annoys the fuck out of me. They freak out of me, like, so much. Oh my gosh. I want to take him by the... I just want to take him by the shoulders and just really shake him and just be like, how have you not learned? And it's that same way, although I think Rin has a lot more character growth than I saw from David Copperfield. She... in some ways, she succeeds a lot. But so often, it's like she's just trying again and again. But she fails to learn that everyone's out for themselves, okay? No one is going to prioritize her. No one is actually just going to look after her, especially not in the world that the Poppy War is set in. So she keeps trusting again and again and again these essentially new people as they come into her life, and it's like, oh my god, girl, please stop trusting people so easily. Because inevitably it's going to lead to your, not necessarily heartbreaking, but inevitably it's going to lead to betrayal or something. And yeah. So for this one, it has to be Rin from the Poppy War. Excellently written character. I mean, very believable. Absolutely wonderful books. R.F. Kuang is definitely one of my new favourite authors. So... and I think the frustration I feel at this point has to be a positive, because she's written such a believable character that it's like every action she makes feels original and organic and genuine. It's just really annoying decisions and choices that she makes. So yeah. Next up, Wroe, To Tame The Floof. A book with a dangerous creature you would love to have as a pet. Because especially this last year or two, I've been in my romance era, there's not been a lot of books I've read that have had particularly dangerous creatures in them. But a book that I have read recently that I spoke about in my first reading update, recent reads of this year, has some pretty dangerous wildlife in it, and I wouldn't necessarily want one as a household pet, but I would totally want to be able to... I absolutely want to be in that position where I get to look after them, and that is the Kaiju Preservation Society. I mean, how awesome would it be if, like, your job was to just go out and, you know, make sure that the Godzillas don't all kill each other? That would be pretty awesome, right? That would be pretty awesome. Yeah. Next up, DM rolls unexpectedly. Always a scary thing. A book that surprised you. Now this one, which is not a book, this is definitely not a book I've spoken about very often on the channel, and at most once or twice, and not recently at all, but that is A Coldest Touch? The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling. I picked this one up, is it 2 years ago now? This came in a Fairy Loot book, Fairy Loot box. They've not done it recently as far as I can tell, because I still watch some unboxings, but Fairy Loot used to do this thing where occasionally one of your bookish items would be a second book. It would be like a paperback. Possibly, sometimes even it would have like a new cover, or in this case it was a new colorway. But yeah, I picked this one up and was like, I'm just going to read 1 or 2 chapters just to confirm that it's not going to be for me, because it's a YA vampire romance set in a high school. I was like, I'm kind of over that. I did not think it was going to be for me. So I picked it up going, I'll read a couple of chapters, at least then I can say I tried it, I've confirmed it's not right, and then I can like pop into a charity shop or something. And then next thing I know, I'm like halfway through it going, I'm actually really enjoying this. I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. It has a lot of similar elements to Twilight, except better. It took everything that annoyed me and frustrated me about Twilight and improved. For example, the 100-year-old vampire, she actually has a legitimate reason for being in high school other than she was bored. You know, she's there for like a legitimate reason. The characters make sense. They communicate with each other. Are yeah, at one point like they're arguing, one stops off, and then they stop, and like when there's miscommunication, there's legitimate reason for there being miscommunication. But then they stop and they circle around and they air out their frustrations and they try to find ways to move forward. So yeah, it's a YA vampire romance, but more. It's sort of like 50% romance, 50% plot. Um, and yeah, it was a really fun little read, and really did not expect it to be. Expected it to be tripe. If I'm perfectly honest, I expected it to be tripe. But yeah, I read it in a couple of sittings. It's a very easy, consumable read, but just a joy to read. It was wonderful. It was lovely. So next up, I would like to rage a character with anger issues. For this one, this is definitely a book I've not spoken about on the channel yet, and that is, I've gone with A Terrible Kindness by Jo Brown and Wroe. And for this one, it's the main character has anger issues. He does not have anger issues in the he gets overly wound up and he doesn't get violent, or there's no like explosions of anger or anything. But instead what we have is this low simmering anger that he has held on to from his childhood into his adulthood, to the point that it is starting to affect a lot of, it's influenced a lot of decisions he's made. It's affecting his relationship between his uncles, between his wife. And this is an anger that he holds towards his mother for, how do I put this without getting spoilery? But basically his perception of choices that she made. Now, I'm not saying that she didn't make bad decisions, but, and because she absolutely did, and I think at one point, I read this for my library book club, and we kind of all agreed that she was not getting the Best Mother prize. She was possibly getting like Worst Parent Award of the Year that we've read recently. Because yeah, some of her decisions are very selfish and narcissistic. But the anger he holds on to has such an impact on his entire life. It literally changes the course of his entire life. An absolutely wonderful, fascinating book. It is, we follow William, who is an embalmer. He's a very recent embalmer. He's just graduated, youngest in his class. He's only 19, youngest in a long time. And on the night of his graduation dinner at like the Embalmer Society place, they get the call saying, we need as many embalmers and anyone who can and everyone possible, all hands on deck, because there's just been a landslide at Aberfan, which was a true event that occurred in Wales. There was a landslide with a lot of shale that basically it buried the school, and unfortunately happened through the day when school was in session. A lot of children died. It is a massive tragedy, and to this day still impacts that area of Wales. This book handled it so incredibly well, so sensitively. That had an impact on William, but then also brought up his own reactions and feelings to his mother, and just everything about this book. I had a really, really good time with this book. It was it's a really good book club book because the discussions that we all had were just so incredible. Absolutely top notch. So yeah, that's that one. Next up we've got Thrust For Seduction, a spicy book. Now, I've gone with a book that I'm actually thinking about rereading because I've been thinking about it every so often, and it's just recently that I've been like, actually, oh yeah, that book, I remember that book. So I'm like, I think I might go back and reread that sometime. This was the first Stephanie Lawrence that I read. It's a historical. I think these books, I think Stephanie Lawrence actually should get more love in the booktube sphere, I've decided. Um, but it is A Secret Love. It is about this girl, um, has, it's very, it's almost in a way reminiscent of the second Bridgerton book, where we've got a girl who is more focused on getting her sister and married and taking care of the family. She is the eldest. I think her father's recently passed away. It has been a few years since I've read this one. So she is now in charge of managing the estate, and she needs help. And the way she does this is that she kind of disguises herself as a governess or something, like pops a veil on and everything, and enlists the help of the male love interest, who she actually has quite an antagonistic relationship with. And they end up hooking up, but he still has no clue that it's actually her, and it's wonderful. It's so much fun. Especially because it has like some of like the best, like him getting protective and possessive, and just it's wonderful. It ticks a lot of boxes. So yes, I think especially right now where it's like, there's so much talk about spicy books and things on BookTube, and it's always the same names get passed about and recommended. So here's one that's slightly different, and that is Stephanie Lawrence. And then our last one, this is prompt number 9. How do you want to do this? A book with a satisfying ending. Okay, now I knew exactly which book. This was not a difficult prompt. I knew exactly which one I wanted to talk about here, because this prompt for me, this ending for me was long awaited. I started reading this series when I was 15. But I know it's a little bit controversial because, oh, excuse me, nose is running. A lot of people don't like this ending. It's not an easy ending. It's not a happy ever after ending. I think it's a very satisfying ending. I think it's very fitting. It's the definition of bittersweet. I can't tell you anything about the ending because, one, we don't spoil endings, but also it's the end, as far as we're aware, at the moment, it is the end of the 16-book series, and that is the end of Assassin's Fate, which is the 3rd book in the Fits and Full trilogy. It's the 16th book overall in the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, who owns my heart. She is my favourite author. She's got some competition coming up, but she still is. Excuse me. And yeah, I sobbed my heart out. I was distraught. It's a proper Robin Hobb ending, okay? She, in true Robin Hobb style, right to the very bittersweet end, she was tormenting and torturing all of her characters. We're gonna cut that last bit, which you don't see anymore, but I absolutely spoiled the ending. But yeah, she absolutely continued torturing them right to the bitter end. So yeah. But I personally, I found it was fitting for me, for those specific characters. It was the perfect ending. It would, if she'd gone for super happy, cheery, let's make everything perfect, it wouldn't have been as satisfying, because that's not what this series was. I thought it worked. It was perfect. She absolutely stuck that ending. But yeah, it's not an ending that's for everyone. But that's it. We've made it to the end. So yeah, like I said earlier, if you have any, how would you answer these? Would you make them any different? What answers would you give? Pop them in the comments below, because I am genuinely fascinated to see. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.